Alright, it is time to do boost emblem builds for every single Pokemon inside Pokemon Unite. Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, and let's see, let's start removing one of these. Oh no, this is going to take 8,000 years. Let me take you over to a website that's a little bit better for this. Here we are at the website UniteDB, where they have a full emblem builder that is fast. You can click things off and add different things and mess around with it and come up with builds. I will link it in the description. It's amazing, and you're able to really test out a lot of your theories and put something down on paper, and you can say, hey, that's actually what that's gonna look like in game. And I guess you're not literally putting it down on paper, huh? Let's start with what we have right here. This is one of the best emblem sets in Pokemon Unite. You could even argue that you don't need the white at all. It doesn't give you much of a bonus, and it does give you some negatives that you could pull from, but this is a full critical hit page. If you wanted to drop the white, you could drop both Meowth and Persian there and just put in a couple more Sand Slashes. I think, honestly, having one Sandshrew makes sense just so you can get the 1% attack. So what this is a critical hit build for Pokemon that don't use special attack. It gives you 10% critical hit, and this honestly is a build that you can use on pretty much any Pokemon in the game and at least get some value out of it, especially Pokemon that are ranged, and especially Pokemon that are ranged with critical hit. So, Pokemon this is great for: Cinderace, Greninja, Charizard it's pretty great for. Honestly, you could run it on things like Pikachu, Eldegoss. It's not the most ideal, but they're constantly doing ranged basic attacks. Of course, Pokemon like Absol, Aegislash works okay with this. Really, the thing about critical hit is giving yourself 10% critical hit. If you were to just go back in time before boost emblems and say that you could have a blanket 10% critical hit on any Pokemon you loaded into the game with and you wouldn't have to think about it, you would go for it. The things that are tough about this is you need to get multiple gold emblems to make it work. I think my critical hit build I have right now is about a 7% critical hit, which is a full page of critical hit emblems, but they're not all gold. I think I have 1 gold or something like that. So this again is good for so many Pokemon. Run it on Garchomp. I mean, it's just so good. Critical hit is so good. This is better percentage-wise than running a Scope Lens or Razor Claws. So I think without question, you have to start talking about the fact that this is just so good. It's so good. You can run it on so many things. Extra critical hit is great. All right, I'm gonna start in categories. So let's start with our attackers, and I'll try to do similar Pokemon near each other. If you don't want to run critical hit on something, there are a few good options for a lot of different Pokemon, but right now we're going to start with attackers, and we're going to start with Cinderace. So before I talk a little bit about Cinderace, let me also say, I mean, you can min-max this to, to the moon and back, but if there's something you like, just play it. Just to let you know, a lot of this was vetted by people over at the Unite Math Cord and the people behind UniteDB to give me some idea of what they think is best. I personally just run full critical hit on Cinderace, but I think this is another good option for a Pokemon like that. So let's take a look at what we're getting from this. You get 6 brown, which is orange in my eyes, which gives you 4% attack bonus. You get 2 white and you get 2 purple. The white and purple are kind of incidental, but you get them from Nidoking and Nidoqueen. They give you a couple purple, and then Meowth and Persian give you crit rate and continue to give you some white here. You've got 3 Sand Slashes right here, so you can get additional crit rate, and it only minuses special attack. With this build, you get a little extra HP, you get a little extra attack, you get nice critical hit rate at about 5% there, and then you lower speed, special defense, special attack, and defense. All things that aren't that relevant for Cinderace, so you become a little squishier with this, but you have a really nice damage output. Again, I think you could run full critical hit and be pretty happy with this setup as well. I personally really like full critical hit on Cinderace, but this is a more consistent way to build that Pokemon. All right, let's talk Greninja. I would have the same recommendations for Greninja, especially if you're running Surf. I mean, Surf resets itself. so the cooldown isn't that beneficial. I could see maybe going 7 black if you're running Water Shuriken, but I do think Greninja already has pretty good cooldown resets. I would probably even just run full crit or something like this. The extra percentage attack is pretty nice, and then you get some nice critical hit as well. A very solid setup for Greninja. Decidueye is an interesting one. Full crit or a build like this is very reasonable, especially for Razor Leaf. Razor Leaf would use one of the two for sure. Now there's the interesting situation of Decidueye using black emblems. This is a little bit of a weird setup, but if you wanted the most cooldown you could get on Decidueye for its Spirit Shackle, and of course its other move having a nice little cooldown reduction there, you would want to run something like this. 7 black, the 2 green are just incidental there, and then 2 brown, 2 purple. The purple also kind of incidental. I have a couple critical hit on there, so you're not losing too much in the critical hit department, even though, yeah, this one's just kind of a, I don't know. I don't know if it's fully worth it. You could probably do a few different variations on Decidueye if you cared about cooldown. You would have to run 7 black and an energy amp to get 1 second off of your Spirit Shackle. So it might be easier just to run the brown build that we looked at a little bit earlier. However, if you're interested in that cooldown, this is a way to get it on Decidueye. Duraludon is one of the few Pokemon that actually take advantage of our red emblems here. 3 red emblems will help Duraludon get the highest attack speed it can attain at level 11 with a muscle band as well. This build right here gives you 6 brown, so you get extra attack. It also gives you some decent HP. It gives you purple, which again is kind of incidental, and I've got it set up to give you 3% critical hit chance. You also could run full critical hit on a Pokemon like this. You could drop some of the brown for more critical hit if you wanted to, but this is a Pokemon that actually does take advantage of the attack speed, so if you play a lot of Duraludon, this is a really strong page for that Pokemon. Heading on in to talk about Alolan Ninetales, this is the first time we're talking about the kind of classic green-black build. This is the green-black that has been touted as the best current green-black from the math geniuses. So what you're looking at here is 6 green for that 4% special attack, 7 black obviously for that big amount of cooldown, and then instead of trying to get another bonus like purple or blue or something like that, you're picking emblems that are giving you a nice bit of HP chunk right here. You're losing some attack value, doesn't really matter on any special attacker. You're losing some defense, not ideal, but not a big deal. You're not losing any special attack, you're not losing any special defense, or you're losing a little special defense, you get a little speed, and you lose critical hit rate, which is pretty irrelevant on special attackers. So if you're running the Avalanche Blizzard setup for Ninetales, you're running something like this. Real quick thing to notice here, all of these are set at gold emblems, so you see how much you get at gold emblems. However, Victreebel is in here at a bronze. The reason for that is it gives you bonus attack, you don't need it, and it takes away special defense, not ideal. So actually a gold Victreebel right here hurts you a little bit more than a bronze does, so you actually wouldn't put it in. The reason it's here is because it's a green-black, and that helps get us our nice green-black combo right here. There are a few variations of this. You could do things that give you other bonuses like blue or purple, but again, this looks like it gives you the most upside, especially when you consider a blue and purple combination there. It doesn't give you that much when you're considering your defenses and special defenses aren't huge for some of your special attackers. They're really not that big, so 1% often doesn't mean too much. However, 300 extra HP is pretty nice. That's actually a pretty sizable bump right there. Now, if you're running Dazzling Gleam Aurora Veil Ninetales, this is a setup that you could use. This is 7 red, and you actually do get a good bonus to your attack speed on this particular build. It's one of the few Pokemon that takes advantage of it. Aurora Veil Ninetales actually does take advantage of the 7 red right here. 2 white I just have on there almost incidentally because this would be a setup if you're running Aurora Veil critical hit, which is something something I actually like to play. I like playing Aurora Veil critical hit with the scope lens. It just gives you some really chunky damage if you happen to get a crit here. This gives you 3% crit chance, and you also happen to grab 2 white right here. Again, incidental, but it's a little nice. You can see a lot of the emblems we're looking at here for this. You get extra HP, you lose defenses, you get a little attack here for Rapidash, not a big deal. Ninetales, you lose a little attack, not a big deal as well. Charmander, you lose a little attack. Again, you're mainly focused on your special attack with this character, which is why you have a negative attack here. This gives you a little special attack, and then right there, that is a setup for a critical hit version of this. Right here is a setup where you get all that attack speed, but you're not focused on critically hitting, and because of that, we get 2 green and 3 black as well. So this helps with your cooldowns a little bit, it helps with your special attack a little bit, and we also get a nice big bonus of HP here. Again, Aurora Veil can take advantage of 7 red, so if you play it a lot, this could be a good emblem setup for you. For Cramorant, this is what you are looking at right here. Just a classic green-black, works amazing for this Pokemon. If you want to play around with critical hits, you could mess around with that a little bit. It's kind of fun and cheesy because its boosted basics are really powerful, but in general, I think running a 6-7 green-black build on Cramorant is the way to go. While we're looking at this build, Delphox as well takes advantage of this just as well. I mean, Delphox with low cooldowns is pretty amazing. You get your full special attack, you get the extra HP, critical hits no longer matter at all for Delphox. Used to be able to crit, can't now, except I guess on its basics, but it can't do it on its Mystical Fire, so very good setup for Delphox. For Gardevoir, I would run the same thing also. There really isn't a great reason not to. Maybe if you decide that you don't care about cooldowns because of the Future Sight resets, you could try to run something else, but cooldown's just good. If you miss, also it helps you. It really is cool with Psyshock. I just feel like it's hard to not run a build like this on many special attackers. It's just amazing. You know it, green-black. Venusaur, I've been running the same thing. I don't really see a reason really not to. It's pretty great. I'd run it on Venusaur. Yeah, for sure. Little extra HP. Cooldown's really nice on Petal Dance, by the way. It's just cool to have a move that has uptime like Petal Dance, so when you use it, it immediately starts its cooldown timer. But you're in the Petal Dance the whole time. So you've seen me run Petal Dance kind of on almost infinite cooldown, running Shell Bell and Energy Amplifier as well as full cooldown. It's pretty awesome. Pikachu. Are you shocked? You really shouldn't be. I will say though, you could run full critical hit on Pikachu. It's not ideal. It's cheesy as heck, but you could do it. There's something to it, but you don't need to. This is just a really solid build. Another special attacker takes advantage of this for sure. So this one I think is pretty interesting, and this is Stored Power Espeon. A few things to notice here. For stored power, I do have some cooldown, only because it's kind of synergizing with what I'm already using here. From what I understand, while the cooldown does affect its moves, it doesn't affect the amount of stored powers you can stack up. And considering stored power and Future Sight kind of reset each other, Future Sight gets reset by stored power and basics, and then your basics help charge up your stored power. I think it might be advantageous to just go 6 green, a little cooldown because it happened to synergize pretty well with what I was doing, and then a ton of HP. And I'm actually interested in trying some pink on this one. So give you a little hindrance reduction. You do happen to get a little move speed reduction, special defense, defense, and attack, which means nothing. But I think it won't be a big deal because you've got the extra move speed from stored power, and I think the hindrance reduction could help you out a little bit. Other options for this would be, you know, swapping in something more basic if you just want a blue-purple or something like that. You could also swap out and go yellow if you're interested in trying that. Attack speed doesn't seem to affect this. If you want more attack speed, which might be a good idea on this Pokemon, I think it would be better just to run a muscle band. So this is what I'm pitching right now for Stored Power Espeon. I would love to know if you've tried this out and you like this setup. One thing for sure, that's a lot of HP that it's giving you. 450 extra HP just in base stats is pretty sweet. And then of course, if you're just running the Psyshock build, either version of it, I think cooldown for sure. For sure. You just want your moves up faster, as much damage as you can get out of it. I think this is definitely the way to go with that build. Sylveon, for Hyper Voice and Mystical Fire, I think this is a reasonable build to consider. I was messing around with some builds that focused on attack speed a little bit, but to be fair, you get almost as much value out of just running a Muscle Band on Sylveon as you do out of running a Muscle Band and Reds. You get a little more top end attack speed at levels, I think it's like 14 and 15 if you run Muscle Band and Red 7, but that is a ways to wait for it. There's definitely an argument that there's a little bit of a benefit there. However, I think just having your moves up more often and your special attack is probably more solid. When I play Mystical Fire, I do run a Muscle Band, and outside of that, I don't think you get enough to justify the Reds. And then, of course, Hyper Voice, just Hyper Voice. Hyper Voice all the time with this. Glaceon is one of the most interesting ones in the game, or Glaceon from how I've been corrected. Apparently it's not like a glacier, it's a glay, which I don't know. Glacier feels very ice-based, but here we go. So the interesting thing about this is you're still getting a ton of special attack because Icicle Spear, I mean, you want special attack for this, but you're getting 3 red, another one of the few Pokemon that could take advantage of 3 red. So this paired with a Muscle Band gets you a few points in the match where you're attacking a little bit faster than you would be otherwise, a few break points of attack speed. I'm going to make a video on this later, but the idea behind this is there are points where you can play Glaceon slightly differently because you have this extra attack speed, so you're able to charge up your big chunks of ice around you faster using Ice Shard if you run a build like this. I totally understand everyone if they would want to run sort of that very simple that very simple black green. I honestly don't think it would be the end of the world. You lose a little bit of viability from it, but black green wouldn't be bad at all on Glaceon. And honestly, I really don't think critical hit would be the end of the world either. I don't know where my full crit build is right now, but I don't think crit would actually be bad either. Let's move into the realm of speedsters, and since I have this up already, let's talk about Gengar. Gengar just wants special attack and cooldown. Hex is so mean with this setup right now. Dream Eater, of course, also really good. It already had some internal cooldown resets once you get those KOs, so you're not getting the most benefit from that, but your Shadow Ball is flying out even faster. I love this on both setups, but Hex for sure. This is just mean. Gengar is mean with this Emblem setup. For Talonflame, I think there are a few interesting options. One option would be giving yourself as much attack as possible and some cooldown. Another option is full critical hit, because Talon does critically hit and its attacks are pretty strong. And then another option is what we're looking at right here. Full cooldown, little bit of attack. The special attack is just because that's how it worked out when I was building this, and a little purple there. Also just kind of added in because you could make the synergy and it wouldn't be the end of the world. This gives you some critical hit rate, some additional movement speed, some additional attack, and then you lose obviously defense, special attack, and special defense. Makes you a little squishier, but all your moves come up faster. I'd probably also pair this with an energy amplifier. Talon is really based around its cooldowns. When your moves are ready to go, you can do a lot with this Pokemon. Here's something you could run that's 5 black for Talon, so you're still getting good cooldown reduction, and now we're heading up the attack scale a little bit and giving you more critical hit as well as more HP with a build like this. I think Talon could benefit from either, really. I think Absol could run something like this and do pretty well. You also, of course, could go full critical hit, but this gives you crit, it gives you extra attack damage, a little extra white and purple inside of it, and it just gives you 5% crit instead of a full 10% crit. If you're really interested in running cooldown reduction on Absol, I think something like this is probably pretty close to what you'd want to run. You don't lose any critical hit chance. In fact, with the 3 critical hit emblems on there, you gain a little bit of critical hit, and you have that big amount of cooldown reduction. I don't know if Absol necessarily needs this. You will probably be running mostly all critical hit if you could on Absol, or critical hit and attack damage. It just feels like probably what works best for it, but having your moves come up faster is always nice, especially with speedsters. I mean, it feels like a lot of their combos really start once you finally get your moves back, so that could be nice for Absol. For Zeraora, I would probably also run something somewhat similar to this. This is another Pokemon that just really excels when its moves are up and really doesn't do that much when its moves are down. There's another variation that I could show you that works for a lot of physical Pokemon, a lot of the speedsters that you could also use, but I don't think there's really anything wrong with getting a little extra HP, a little extra attack, a little extra crit rate at the, sake of some of your defenses here, as well as getting all that cooldown reduction. It can help out a lot when it's time to get in there and use another Discharge or Volt Switch or Wild Charge. This is a build here for Zeraora that I think is pretty solid. It was recommended to me by the members of the Math Cord here. It's that you get a little extra speed, a bunch of extra HP, and you're still getting that big benefit right over here of having 7 black cooldown emblems. You also happen to get white when you add the 2 birds up there together. You get purple as well. So if you're looking for cooldown and some extra health, this could be a pretty solid call for a Pokemon like Zeraora. Blissey. Black-green. It's hard to overstate how much this Pokemon can just benefit from having its moves up. I mean, it's just so massive. Being able to heal, throw eggs, safeguard, helping hand, it's all incredible on Blissey. The green helps with the amount of healing and shielding you do, so I think this is a really solid call. You would think that maybe you could use white for this Pokemon because it does have the largest HP pool in Pokemon Unite, but I think you just get so much more value out of being able to use your moves and use them more effectively that it's really hard to recommend a different build on Blissey. This is also a very solid build for most Eldegoss plays, so there's an exception to this, but most of the time, Eldegoss, you want your moves up and you want them doing more damage or healing more. Very similar to what we were looking at with Blissey here. So black-green works very well with a Pokemon like this. Basically, anyone who you're relying on your moves all the time, especially Pokemon that are supports where you're giving shields and healing to allies, having those moves up more often is pretty amazing. Let me now show you this. This probably looks pretty familiar right here. That's because this is very similar to Alolan Ninetales Dazzling Gleam build, just slightly different when we put that Venomoth in all the way up there. But basically, Eldegoss is another Pokemon that with a Muscle Band and 7 red emblems can get a really nice attack speed upgrade. Almost the entire game, I believe. I think it starts at level 4 and then it's there the entire game. So yeah, this Pokemon is one of the weird ones that can actually take advantage of these red emblems right here. And I could see a lot of people running it for that reason. Eldegoss is always auto attacking, so something like this can help out a lot. For a Pokemon like Mr. Mime, of course you could go black-green. That works for really anything that's special attack. Cooldown, always pretty amazing here, but I've got something else that I'm kind of playing around with here, which is a little variation on a green, black, pink for Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime is up near the enemy a lot, and I think a hindrance reduction could be nice. It also gives you a big chunk of HP right there, 300 extra HP. You can see here, once again, we have the bronze Victreebel in there. That's because its coloring is great, black and green, but it does minus special defense and increase attack, which isn't really beneficial for any of our special attackers. So you'll often see that in here in bronze, but everything else right here creates a pretty nice setup. I want to play around more with the pink emblems, and I think this is a pretty cool build to use it on. Also, for a Pokemon like Mr. Mime, this build from earlier is pretty solid. Lots of extra HP, you get purple, white, black, green. Pretty solid for a Pokemon like Mr. Mime, for sure. And while we're looking at this setup, I also think Wigglytuff could benefit from all 3 of those builds we looked at. Black-green, this build right here, as well as the build we were just looking at that I think could be pretty fun, which is sort of this black-green-pink build. I think all 3 of those are very, very solid. The Math Cord folks are recommending something like this. Lots of extra HP, some nice speed. The defenses aren't going to hurt you too much because you're a pretty heavily defensive Pokemon already, and losing some crit is not a big deal at all, unless of course you're running rollout critical hit Wiggly, which I guess that's a possibility. But in general, I think those 3 setups for Wiggly are very, very good. Now let's talk about Hoopa. This is not a build that I have come up with. This is a build that I was given by people who are really drilling down into what is best for Hoopa. So the thought process behind this is obviously the extra HP is nice. The additional you get from 4 white is cool, but not the biggest thing behind it. The additional damage you get from 4 green, also very cool. 5 black seems to be the break point if you are running Hoopa and you want to be able to hit multiple moves inside its Unite move. I believe you get 1 extra beam inside its Unite move if you time it correctly if you're running 5 black. From what I understand, you don't get any additional benefit in that moment from running 7 black, so this is why this is looked at as a very, very strong Hoopa build. I gotta be honest, it's not a Pokemon I main a ton. I think if you're playing Hoopa, you're kind of in Hoopa jail, so I don't get to play it as often as I would like, but I've heard from many that this is a very, very solid play for Hoopa. Pokemon like Machamp could definitely benefit from running this now that we're in this all-rounder area. Without question, also black is very strong, and I'll have a black build for a lot of our all-rounders here. But taking a look at this, you get critical hit, which works pretty well. Machamp has multiple moves that let you critically hit or crit better, so that's very solid. You know, you jump in with your dynamic punch, and then if the next attack crits, that's a really, really powerful attack. So this giving you that 5% crit ain't bad. It's really nice that it's giving you the 6 brown right there. 2 white, 2 purple, again, just kind of incidental because you can build critical hit around it. So I think this is a pretty solid build for Machamp, actually leaning into critical hit and leaning into attack damage. You also can run full critical hit on Machamp. I don't think that would be a bad idea. I really don't think full critical hit's a bad idea on many Pokemon. And now here we are back at that 7 black build that we have for someone like Machamp. This is definitely something you could run. You lose a little crit rate, which I don't love that much, but again, tons of HP, and then all of that 7 black cooldown that you could use. I think another variation for Machamp would be getting your 7 black here, getting 2 of your orange or brown, and getting 2 of your purple right here. You still retain some critical hit rate as well. So I think this could be solid. You're not getting close to as much HP, but you're keeping that critical hit, and you do get a little bit of a bonus from your attack as well. For Charizard, a lot of those last builds I think all hold up. This is a very solid choice for something like that. Again, losing a little bit of crit rate is not something you absolutely love, but you could also drop something in here so that you were able to maintain that critical hit rate. If you wanted to, for instance, drop one of these whites here, like Pidgeotto, you could drop that, and instead of that, you could use something like a Sand Slash right here. Get your critical hits back. You lose a little HP, but then you also get plus 1% attack. So this can kind of be moved in and out there to make this build work, but this is very solid for Charizard. I think critical hit is not bad for Charizard. It has the highest critical hit rate in the game, up there with Cinderace, Greninja, Decidueye, a few others, but it has a 30% critical hit chance, which also means that sort of the build we were looking at earlier here, this attack with a decent amount of crit is also very, very solid for a Pokemon like Charizard. You know, it's interesting because a lot of the all-rounders I think you can build in a ton of different ways. That's kind of one of the benefits of the all-rounders, really. This is something I've been messing around with a little bit on Lucario. So you're getting that big advantage from attack. Lucario gets a ton from attack, and you're 99% of the time stacking an attack weight, so I think leaning into that's not a bad idea. You get a little blue here, a little purple here, a little black here as well. It doesn't mess with your critical hit rate at all. You get some HP, and you get 8 attack. I kind of like this a lot for Lucario. However, there are a few different directions you could go with Lucario. Attack and crit like this, definitely not a bad idea. Coming back to this build that we've looked at a decent amount from earlier, you know, Lucario, just like any Pokemon, could benefit a lot from that cooldown reduction right there, so I don't think running 7 black on Lucario is a bad idea at all. Lots of extra HP. little extra attack, not too bad either. I think what we were looking at just a second ago for Lucario right here could actually be really solid for Dragonite. So if you're running 7 black on Dragonite and you have an energy amp and a shell bell, you don't have to hit a single basic attack to keep your hyper beam charged. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best build. It's honestly kind of cheesy. If you just drop the shell bell, you can hit 1 basic attack in there and you're gonna have your hyper beam up. So it's not something that you absolutely need. However, it is a pretty cool thing to do. I also think Dragonite is ranged. It has a good critical hit rate. You could run a full critical hit thing with Dragonite and you would be very, very happy. That Pokemon crits a ton at range for a lot of damage. So I think that's also a really reasonable boost emblem build for Dragonite. Azumarill. If I'm running Azumarill and I'm using Play Rough, I'm probably not going 7 black just because the move is up so often that I don't think you need to do something like that. But if I'm running Water Pulse, I might run a build a little bit like this here. So you're getting a little blue, you're getting a little black, or brown and purple. At the same time, you have negative crit rate, which means absolutely nothing on Azumarill. It does not matter if you have negative crit rate with this Pokemon, because this Pokemon either crits or it doesn't. If I'm not caring at all about cooldown on Azumarill, I think I would run something like this. I think I'd go 6 brown right there, so you can get a ton of attack, a bunch of HP up there. You're getting 300 additional HP. Your crit rate goes down, but it does not matter at all. You're also getting 3 pink to purple. So I think the nice thing about the pink here is that hindrance reduction could be very, very beneficial when you're getting in the thick of things and fighting the enemy, and you're doing that a ton with Azumarill. So I would try something like this out for that Pokemon. Sword, sword, sword. For sword, I want a ton of cooldown if I can get it. I also think you could run a full critical hit and attack build on this if you'd like. I've noticed, however, that with Aegislash, it's not that I'm always looking for more damage. You're doing damage based off percentage HP when you're hitting with your boosteds and things like that. So for that reason, while I would love those to be critical hits, I think that's awesome. For that reason, I feel like more often Aegislash is about maintaining yourself in a battle, and just having the ability to go back and forth between sword and shield form is probably one of the most important things. So you could play around with a few of the builds that we've seen so far for the physical sort of all-rounders or even attackers, but I just really like having some HP. I really like having cooldown on sword a lot. For Tsareena, if I'm playing Stomp, I might be playing around with something like this, just upping my attack as much as it could possibly go. I also think Tsareena is pretty amazing with cooldown as well, just anything that lets it use its moves more often. The thing about it though is it does get resets as it's in battle, so sometimes it feels like cooldown's super helpful, sometimes it doesn't. However, I know some Tsareena mains who swear by a cooldown reduction build on this Pokemon, somewhat similar to what we've been looking at right here. So pretty similar to something like this. Big chunks of HP. I've seen one with 4 purple, 2 blue, so you're kind of sacrificing a little bit of the HP for some of the defenses there, and you're still keeping that 7 black. Cooldown is great on tons of Pokemon, and Tsareena having its moves up is super, super important. For Garchomp, I've been enjoying full critical hit. I just really like it. When that boosted gets going and you're hitting with some of those critical hits, it is pretty massive here. You, of course, could change this around to whatever you have for full critical hit, and just like we were looking at earlier, another really solid build for Garchomp would be something like this. You do lose some of the critical hit potential, but you get extra attack, which makes this more consistent. I've been told that the consistency of this is actually a little more powerful than full critical hit, but I do like rolling the dice quite a bit with some of this stuff. As far as cooldown, you could absolutely run one of the cooldown sort of physical builds that we looked at earlier for Garchomp, which is something kind of closer to, where are you at, buddy? Something closer to this one right here. Definitely a decent look for a physical all-rounder using a cooldown build. However, with Garchomp, I really feel like once you use your moves, you're in that engagement, hopefully you're near the enemies enough where you can get off some of your attacks. I just kind of want them to hit like a truck, and for me, that takes critical hit. Buzzwole is newer for me, so I can't say that I know exactly how I'd like to run this. I was playing it with a lot of critical hit, and I thought that was fine. I was playing it with cooldown, and I thought that was fine. The thing about Buzzwole is when it doesn't have its moves, it's kind of a real bummer. However, you get the ability to reset your superpower at level 11, so cooldown might not be the most optimal thing. It actually is probably just a hybrid critical hit attack build that could work the best. That being said, it's just so hard not to recommend cooldown on something because it's so freaking cool. But with Buzzwole, extra attack definitely couldn't hurt it. Crit rate definitely couldn't hurt it. There may be a build out there once we get more pink emblems where you take advantage of Buzzwole and you give it some hindrance resistance, but that being said, I think you're probably better off with some cooldown, some attack, or some crit on this Pokemon. Let's start with Greedent here when we're talking about our defenders. Now this, what you're looking at, is just silly, trollish nonsense, but it's kind of fun. It's one of the only Pokemon I can think to maybe run yellow on, just because you're constantly running over to the enemy side of the map and invading and causing havoc. You also have pink, so that when you're getting hit, you're not dealing with hindrances as much. And then you have white on here. You could use this with orange as well, but I play this while stacking an Eos cookie, so it's just fun to think about getting some extra HP while I'm doing it. This build is straight up just trolling, but Greedent kind of is a troll, right? I think otherwise you would probably run something more stereotypical with attack, and you could even run something with black because cooldown would not be bad on this Pokemon at all. So some of the stuff that we looked at earlier for a Pokemon like this, this is a very reasonable setup for Greedent as well if you're trying to get that cooldown. And then if you're trying to get attack as well as some cooldown, let me see where I have it right here. I think something like this is also pretty solid. You get good defenses from it, you get a little cooldown, and you get some attack for Greedent. However, I mean, when you're running a Floatstone and running into the enemy central area all the time, this is pretty fun. I just love Greedent. I love it so much. Slowbro, a bit of a throwback from earlier, but if you're playing this Pokemon, low cooldown, tons of special attack. You play this more like an attacker, honestly. You could mess this around if you're playing Surf or doing something else, but also you just want really low cooldowns on your Amnesia, and then Scald or Surf, extra damage. It's all just kind of perfect for a Pokemon like that. It feels weird because this is definitely a kit that feels more like a, mage sort of kit, range special attacker, but that's essentially what Slowbro is, and I think this is pretty amazing for it. Surprise, surprise, Blastoise is going to be running probably about the same thing. Lots of HP, its cooldown on its moves are super important. It's all special attack based. There really isn't much else that you'd want to try with this. I've been trying some tank builds out for Blastoise and messing around with that a bit, but the truth is it's already really tanky. The extra HP you get here is nice, and now your moves come back faster surfs, faster rapid spins. It's just pretty important for this Pokemon, so I think this is a very solid build for Blastoise as well. This is a really solid defender setup that I think you could run on multiple defenders. It's pretty good on a Pokemon like Mamoswine. Obviously, you're not really worried about critical hits. The reduction in attack isn't really a big deal. Having a lot of cooldown is very nice, so you can use your moves all the time. Then you also have a few defenses you're getting out of it. You're getting 2 blue and 4 purple. Not the hugest thing in the world, but absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. I think this is a pretty solid setup for Mamo. If you wanted to lean more into attack, you could drop a couple things and do, cooldown and attack on this Pokemon. But I kind of like a setup like this for sort of that tanky, attacking Pokemon that really benefits every time its moves are up, but you still want to defend a ton. And you're not really losing any defenses with this. You're not losing any defense, and you're actually gaining special defense and some movement speed. Trevenant is a weird one, and I think a lot of the builds we've looked at could be okay for Trevenant, but I wanted to play around with something here. So with this, you're getting 4 white and 4 brown, which both help Trevenant. It's attack based, but it also really cares about its HP. You're also getting a ton ton of HP with this, as well as 2 blue and 2 purple, upping its defenses. And you're really not losing any defense on this except a little, a bit of negative defense, no negative special defense, no negative speed, a lot of negative special attack, but you're not a special attacker. So I actually think this would be a really, really cool Trevenant setup, and I'm going to play around with this later today because I think it's time to do some rock and roll Trevenant, right? So I think this could be a really, really solid Trev setup. For Snorlax, I would want to run something like this. This is also a Pokemon that I was playing around with sort of different amounts of HP and all this stuff, but I just think you want your moves up all the time. This gives some extra defenses and some extra HP. Nice little speed boost. Critical hits don't matter unless you're playing Flail. And if you're playing Flail, honestly, I would just run full critical hit. I think that's the whole point of that build, right? You could run attack crit as well, but if I'm playing Flail, I'm probably just gonna play full critical hit, something, there's my cheesy Greedent build, something like this right here. Or if I wanted to sort of branch away from that slightly, I would do sort of the hybrid attack and critical hit. The other thing about Flail is Flail's damage is calculated based on your where you're at on your HP gauge. So giving yourself more HP wouldn't be a bad idea. I often stack an Eos cookie when I'm playing Flail. That being said, I don't know. You might just get more out of the extra critical hit chance, because when you critically hit on a low health Flail, it deletes people. I probably would just lean into that and go full critical hit on Flail Snorlax. Crustle, I'm probably keeping this, but you know what? I'm actually probably not. Crustle, I think I'm just gonna run full critical hit. Where are you, buddy? I think I just run this on Crustle, honestly. Give me a little attack, give me a little HP, sure, but I just want the critical hit. I want to crit with my Stealth Rocks if I'm running Stealth Rocks, or I really want to crit with X Scissor. Maybe if I'm running Stealth Rocks, I could play a little cheesier, and I could play something like the Greedent build we were taking a look at earlier, just, you know, keeping my speed up, lowering my hindrances when I'm running away. I could see playing something like this and being really, really cheesy on it, but at the same time, I just want a ton of critical hits with Crustle. I just want to be hitting those big pops of damage when I'm running around the map. And now that we have been through every single Pokemon, here are just a couple builds I want to leave you with that were suggested by members of the Math Cord. This is a physical build where you're getting 2 blue, 2 white, 6 of the brown right there. And as you can see, stat-wise, you're not really taking anything that you need. So the only thing that's negative here is special attack. Every other stat is positive. I think this is a really cool build, and I actually really want to try this and the special attacker version out because it's interesting to have no actual downsides for your kit. So this is cool for anyone that is a physical attacker. And here is the other solid build. This is for special attackers. So you're still getting 7 black, you get 4 green, but as you can see, the only negatives are to attack and to crit rate, which for special attackers, except for Glaceon, that doesn't matter at all. Glaceon needs a little, you know, crit rate, obviously. But in general, this is a build set up for a lot of special attackers that doesn't really hurt you at all. You still get 7 black, and every stat is either not affected or affected positively for what you need. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. Please, if you did, like, comment. I sure would appreciate it. It took a lot longer than I expected. I want to give a big shout out to the Unite Math Cord and Unite DB for helping me, giving me some guidance on some of these. It was a lot of things that I wanted to put out there, and then they also presented a lot of cool builds that I was able to show you here today. So huge shout out to them. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you so much. I guarantee there's an edit in here where I start saying something and I go, all right, thank you all. I guarantee I do that. I've been editing this for a while, so I hope it helps. Love you. Share it around. Goodbye.